So we are recording, and it's 12:05. This is the preamble, the Charter Preamble Subcommittee meeting, and I'll call the meeting to order at 12:05. I proposed an agenda when I called the meeting, so I can just pop that up on the screen. I was practicing earlier, so this should work. Can everybody see that?
Yeah, looks good.
It's the same thing that I proposed when we called the meeting, and the first item is to decide on a meeting schedule. Although I thought about that later after reading the rest of it, and we might change that depending on what we say. We might change the meeting schedule depending on what we decide in the rest of the meeting. So I'd be willing to move that down. So do we have approval for that agenda?
I approve.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Okay. Commissioner Niles, any comments?
That's good.
Okay. Okay. So we have our work. I'm going to jump right to the work plan because that we need to decide how we're going to accomplish that, and that might determine our meeting schedule. And according to the work plan that we had approved in October, the October meeting is was it, I think, on the 5th or the 6th?
6th.
Yeah, the 6th. And we agreed to have a first touch with the full commission with our draft language. And also another item on there was survey questions. So any ideas? I think we have some different comments on what our language could be. I know Commissioner Niles and I both have talked about it before, and we had some different ideas. We got some input from Doug Lasher, who, his background screen with the attributes of good government. That could be part of it. Commissioner McClamen has offered some discussion. So how to put that all together in a preamble and is, I think that's our challenge.
So the other thing, I'm looking at our approved work plan for the whole commission, and we'll need to have our draft first touch and kind of your report ready by the 30th. To give a few days for the executive team to coordinate with you on the report and the presentation.
Right, okay.
And Chuck sends out some more samples from different places of items on this term's ballot in other jurisdictions, right?
Yeah, well, San Juan, it's going on this year's as a charter amendment ballot measure. King County's was actually last year's.
Okay.
And King County's is more of an amendment to an existing preamble that they had. So is San Juan's, but they're basically blowing out their one sentence preamble and making it really long. But that's what's going on the ballot.
That San Juan actually got community input. They went to their tribes, they did everything, they got community input, and it's very sincere, and I really like that.
Yeah. So we should talk about that.
It's something that I've been pushing for from the commission for a long time, is like really get community input. It would be awesome if community, we could have these meetings and invite people from the community to be part of these meetings.
And we can do that. There's nothing precluding us from asking for public to attend these meetings. There's nothing precluding us from adding non-commissioners to the subcommittee as well.
I know, I just gotten a lot of pushback about that, so.
Yeah. But you know, that I have not been part of that, so I don't know what that is, but I'm just saying that through our bylaws, we are being able to do that. But I think I'd like the idea, although it would mean we probably would need to move our meetings to the evenings.
Yeah.
If we're going to ask others to join. My only suggestion about doing it at noon was because when we were doing the DEI subcommittee, that was the only time during the day that Chris Goodwin could join us, because otherwise he'd have to take vacation time.
Chris is now working a 4-day schedule, so he might be a little bit more open.
All right.
Oh, does that mean Friday's off? Terry, does that mean, do you know if that means Terry's Friday's off?
I believe he has Mondays off,
Oh, okay.
so, but I'm not sure. And then he also,
Okay.
you know, we had meetings after hours with him, but I don't know if that means that he has a longer day. He may have a 10-hour days, so
I'll get a hold of him and see.
weekends and Mondays might, I don't know. But we, you know, I don't want to speak for Chris.
Right,
Sorry.
I'll reach out to him and see what we can set up.
So interesting looking at San Juan's, because they brought in a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, indigenous peoples, economy, climate, ecosystem. Um, and it's a little, I guess I'm a little surprised knowing San Juan's background with their charter, because they adopted a charter similar to ours, and then a couple of years later pulled back on a lot of it. And so it's interesting that they're proposing this. It'll be interesting to see how the vote comes down in November.
Yeah, so that's on
Preamble?
next year's ballot, you said, or?
Yeah, it's on November's ballot. They put it on the ballot. I just I don't know if did I send around the voter guide?
Yes.
I think you did.
Are we
Was it
discussing
San?
issues or just the preamble?
Say that again, you
Yep.
broke up.
Are you referencing their other amendments or just the preamble?
Just the preamble, but I just sent around, I just pulled something quickly and sent it around, but I can't remember if I sent the voter guide with that or not. But yeah, it's on this year's ballot.
The preamble.
For San Juan, you sent the sample ballot.
Yeah, so they actually have multiple measures, but this is one of them.
Yeah, now, is that the one that said it replaced the word citizen with resident or something like that?
No,
Something
Seattle,
more.
King County said,
That was King.
Yeah, King County's changed it, but what San Juan's proposition is, number one, it basically repeals the existing preamble and then adds in the acknowledgement of the Coast Salish people, and the whatever, the other items that we've been talking about. It's just to be interesting to see how the vote goes on that. It's such a change from what they had before, and knowing
You know
San
what?
Juan County, it's interesting.
I've been listening to some of their commission meetings, and they're really, they do really honor the tribe there. It's a big part of living in San Juan. Like even at their commissioner meetings, they have an acknowledgement every single meeting of where they are and the land that they are meeting on. It's pretty, their commissioner meetings are pretty, I mean, I really like them when I listen to them.
It almost makes me think that it'd be nice to reach out to Sam Robinson, who's with the Chinook tribe. And I've coordinated with him over the years on a variety of things, including some art that we put on the vine at the Mall Transit Center. He might be interested in weighing in on what we're talking about. He might be able to offer up a few ideas.
That's a good idea. And that was the thing that I kind of like, you know, when I was discussing like other groups that we should talk about, I'm glad that everybody's embracing that now. Because I didn't feel like it was fully embraced. And so if you want to open that, I know that when I tried to do it before, you said there's a certain, you have to go through somebody in the county to do that. And can I finish that? And I found out when I reached out to the county that you, the neighborhood association lady that you gave me, and or the person in the county that deals with the tribe, and she said, no, not really. I don't really have, there's not really a process. So if you find out differently, that'd be awesome to be able to reach out to them.
Typically, when you deal with the tribes on a public level, like a project level, you need to work through the government, and typically with the Cowlitz and tribes upriver, it's been through the DOTs. So Sam and I've just known Sam for a while and attended a number of functions that he's been involved with. And so I can just reach out to him individually. That's not a problem. I'd be happy to. I haven't talked to him in a few years. I'd like to catch up with him.
Oh, would you do that, Chuck? Would you take that action?
Yeah.
Can you CC us on any of emails that you have going out to him?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
I really like the paragraph in the King County one that I think Terry was making a point that transparency and accountability was key in our changes to the charter. And I liked the paragraph that said to establish separate legislative and executive branches, ensure responsibility and accountability for local and regional governments and services, enable effective public participation, preserve and protect and enhance a healthy rural and urban environment and economy, promote a superior quality of life, and secure the benefits of home rule and self-governance. I thought that actually summarized, you know, somewhere in there embedded within what we want to do that customizes it to Clark County. That was a good summary of what we hope the charter accomplishes.
I agree, Bridget. And I think that if we're going to do this, we got to think of it like the process for doing it. Like, I know that when I was involved in like some people with the 4 statements and those kind of things, there was a draft. Like there was a really simple draft that we worked off. And then we worked on that. And I think that I had an successful one I worked with you, Bridget, on and stuff. And that's kind of a way to go about the process. Like,
didn't you commit at the last meeting to doing a draft?
Right.
You took down the ideas and said you would circulate it. How's that coming along?
So I'm going to get that going and I will send it out to you. I started like a basic one with some of your ideas and stuff, and I'll send that out to you. But I think that we should just kind of all go, okay, that's the best way to kind of go at this. And then Chuck can bring us back something from the tribes. I can go to my groups and bring back additions, and then we can make, does that sound like a way to go about it? Because actually I thought it worked well when I was putting together statements for our amendments. I don't know, does anybody have any other ideas or want to go another route?
Well, I think it's a lot easier for people to respond and edit than it is to come up with ideas that are then incorporated. So I'm all for keeping it as simple as, actually, I'd like to see the whole preamble be as simple as possible. And by the time we add in tribes and the environment and specifics like that, rather than general statements that sort of are umbrella statements for a lot of the key issues we have, I think then it'll be a better preamble. But
Yeah, I
that's
like
just me.
I like incorporating, which is kind of like the idea I had as well as that last suggestion that you made around what's the county motto about our future?
Proud past, promising future.
Proud past, promising future. I think that is a nice something to have in there. I don't and
I
so
like the vision that the staff came up with too. That was a lengthy involvement process with representation from staff across county departments. They took about a year to come up with the vision and the mission, and then they had the plan and the implementation, which I'm not saying is done, but I thought that the vision was really something that tied in with what we were talking about.
I agree. Yeah. So that as far as the process, we'll kind of stick with that, and I'll have something out by the end of the week, I guess. Does that sound okay?
And
Would it-
when you say you'll have something out, does that, you mean like with email? How do we
Yeah.
promulgate
Yeah.
that or, or share it?
Yeah. So how we did it with 4 statements is sent a draft out, and people were able to kind of make comments by email, and then changing the draft and just looking at it and just having a discussion on. I mean, there's only 4 of us. Discussion on email.
5, maybe 5, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, don't forget Commissioner Goodwin in your
I
emails.
know. It's just easier to do it as much as we can I mean, we can send out a draft and then have comments and then have a meeting, and you can change them in real time. I think that I was working with Chuck on one where things were being changed in real time at a meeting, going, well, people go, I don't really like the way that is or that is, and we can do that in an actual meeting when we actually make changes. But just getting something going with Bridget's suggestions and what I can pull from the ones that we liked and by email. And does that make sense?
And as far as the
Is that a
tribe
motion?
goes, sorry.
Oh, well, I was just asking if that was a motion, we can make an official decision here today and say, yep, we decided we're going to do that.
Well, I don't think, I mean, this is a friendly committee, but if you want to vote on things,
All right.
that's fine.
We're being recorded,
I know.
Okay.
And
You
I
can
look
share.
awful. I want to tell you guys, I'm like not feeling well. We've been sick for 2 days, so I apologize for my appearance.
I'll defer to the chair as to how he wants to handle it. If you want a formal motion, we can do that.
I just wanted to make sure that everybody agrees with it, and then we can, then we all know what we agreed on. So I'm okay with Commissioner Niles' suggestion. And if anybody has any more comments on it or is against it, speak up now, and then we can certainly comment on it further.
I would say we
Okay.
approve by unanimous consent.
Okay, we approved it by unanimous consent.
So I have a question for everyone. So on October, with the first touch on this, we just have to have something that's like a draft that we're working on. We don't actually have to have a finished product, just something that we're actually working on to get to show commissioners the directions that we're going. It would be November when we would have to actually have a finished product, right?
No, first touch is first touch. That's your first review, first commission review of the draft.
Of the draft. So then we would, but a draft that is a draft. So it doesn't have to be a right. Okay,
That's correct.
sounds good.
Something
Because-
that we can share with the commission and get a discussion on.
Okay.
But I think it has to be a fairly finished draft if they're doing, I mean, there are drafts and drafts. We've sort of done some sort of brainstorming around it, but when we get something back and we all have input back and forth, we should be able to do that before whatever date Chuck just mentioned. So that what we're presenting, they can then also have input into it, et cetera.
Right.
I'd like us to be fairly clear on what we're proposing by then.
That would be ideal, but you know, you never know, like, you know, when you're reaching out to community, if somebody brings up something that, you know, we could always have that just.
Well,
was
it's a good question whether you're going to get that input prior to October the 3rd or not, or whatever date it was.
Right.
I mean, in
Yeah.
some ways, well,
I think it means we have to have something that presents as a possible preamble.
yes,
It's your preliminary draft.
Draft.
Yes.
And so if
Yeah.
it is something that is not even considered a preliminary draft, you run the risk of the commission coming back in November and saying, this is very different than what we were looking at. We want another run at it, and you might miss your deadline to get it on the ballot.
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean by that.
I would, well, I would keep my mouth shut and let Chuck answer that
I
question.
mean,
Well,
I wasn't.
But my understanding is that, yeah, we don't have much time. So we
Right.
need to just click along. So,
First
Yeah, I don't think-
touch, first review in October, second review of the more formal proposal in the day after the election, then the public events, town halls, etc. So what the public should be seeing should be pretty well defined as of the first Wednesday, November meeting.
Okay, thank you. That was my point I was making. Yeah.
and that's my worry about when you ask for public input. Because we've got very limited time. I think, you know, a discussion with the tribe is good, but how many different groups are we thinking of, and how tight a turnaround can they do? Because it sounds like we'd like to have a rough draft, say, Terry, I'm not putting the timeline on you, but it's just brainstorming, a rough draft by next week so that we have a chance to send it to contacts in different groups and say, do you have any reaction or suggestions? Because we're on a tight timeline. We want to have a reasonably finished draft, let's put it that way, by the October meeting. So it does tighten up our timeline significantly.
I think we need to probably provide a scope of what we're trying to do by reaching out to different groups. You know, we're not trying to do a broad history of indigenous peoples in Clark County into our preamble.
Right.
And I like how San Juan County has done it, because they mention the rich history of indigenous people, and then they mention community values, culture, and other things. They're pretty broad statements. It doesn't get into a lot of specifics as far as who the indigenous peoples are or what groups they're referring to. And I don't think it needs to be with us. I was just looking for Sam Robinson. He's really good at the spoken and written word. And so if we wanted some illustrious sentences to add into the preamble, he would be one I would go to for that. Doesn't mean we're looking for a history of the Chinook people.
Absolutely.
Just
no, but he
looking for
likes to talk
something
about
that
that too.
spices it up.
I think it would be really neat if he could give us a greeting from the people. I mean, something that encapsulates, I don't know, a growing relationship or sacred, I don't know what, but there's some sort of welcoming statement to those reading the preamble. That would be neat in his language.
Yeah, and we need to be careful because the Chinook are still trying to get federal recognition. The
Right.
Cowlitz already have it. And while the Chinook and Cowlitz are related, showing favoritism toward any single tribe will not be well received.
I
We
agree.
also have to remember that the Grand Ronde has connections with this area as well, and they actually have been opposing recognition of the Chinook.
Yes.
So we don't want to be, yeah, we don't want to leave anybody out, but we don't want to be specific picking
Yeah,
favorites
and
either.
one of my other thoughts was to go to Val Alexander. You might know her from Friends of Clark County, but she's also a active member of the Grand Ronde tribe,
Yeah.
and see if she could offer anything.
Yeah, she'd be good. Yeah. Okay.
So I think more of what I would like to get before 1 o'clock is to maybe give Terry some assistance, is what is the structure and what is the type of content that we want to include here? So we aren't writing a book as a preamble, but we are writing something that would be inclusive of our values. What do we want to do?
I'm just trying to find that mission statement I found.
So that's a good idea. And, you know, I don't have my notes in front of me from the last meeting, but there were some notes that I did take. I'll have to track them down, but we could go back over that. We wanted to, and I think Chuck, the separation of powers was something that somehow wanted to include in there. The was it the accountability? I'm trying to remember here. Separation of powers.
Effective government was one that
Well, I'm looking at Doug Lasher's because I don't remember giving bullets, but Doug
We did
said,
the last meeting.
do you have that? Accountability, effectiveness, efficiency, transparency, and checks and balance. That was
And those are
what he
things
was.
that we talked about at the last meeting, and I wrote them down. But then also, and then we wanted the story, right? We wanted to kind of like start with this kind of a story like Bridget has right there. You know, we could put in our proud past, promising future, kind of tie that in.
So, yeah, those are the, I just found Doug Lasher's bullets and posted them on the agenda there so you can see them.
Which is the same bullets that we had in our-
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So as far as like, let's see, checks and balance, efficiency, transparency. Yeah, I need to kind of, let me try to pull up what I have here. I did write some notes if I can find them.
Would you like to share them?
No, I can't find them yet.
I am
Okay.
really liking San Juan County's proposal, because it contains a lot of what we've been talking about. And this idea of a declaration of community values, I think follows, it's one of those that we could consider depending on how the DEI measure turns out. I really like theirs the more I look at it. Because there's actually a preamble which has kind of touches on those 5 bullets that Doug suggested, and then maybe they go a little too far with declaration of community values, but actually the more I'm reading it, the more I'm kind of migrating to it.
I like the Clark County vision. It's a community with safe streets, neighborhood structures, healthy natural and built environments, prosperity and well-being for diverse population, engaged civil and informed citizens, inclusion and acceptance of all people with a first-rate infrastructure, a population and environment prepared for current and future job opportunities, and collaboration throughout the community is necessary to achieve this vision. So I just thought it covered those sort of bases that I think was in one of the other samples that, you know, like people could pick out each one of those and actually do a whole program around it. I mean, you know, it sort of shapes what an action plan might be.
Is that adopted?
It was adopted by, yes. It was adopted back in 2017 and adopted by council after it was developed by the staff.
Yeah, I mean,
I just think we wouldn't pick that up precisely, but those bullet points or whatever sort of parallel those that we've seen in other charters as far as what we want to have.
Some are probably redundant to the values that we already talked about too, but
Yeah, anyway, it's just a,
and that was you sent that in your email too, right?
I think
Bridget?
I did.
Yeah, I copied it
Yeah.
out of there.
so
Okay.
it sounds like what I'm hearing, if we can try to encapsulate this discussion, we want something in a preamble that summarizes what we're expecting, why we're doing the charter.
Yes.
Because, you know, a lot of like, we the people of San Juan County, we the people of Clark County, et cetera. But we want to add a little bit more recognition to the diverse culture and indigenous rich history that we have. And then it sounds like we might want to get into a declaration of values, which is really what San Juan County does, and what Clark County's mission statement is kind of getting at is declaration of their vision, which could be values. And that would be a two-part preamble then, the kind of the preamble, what is this all about? We want our rights thing, and then declaration of values being the second part. So maybe a two-part preamble, preamble, and a values preamble, which could be a paragraph and another paragraph. I don't know. That's kind of what I'm thinking I'm hearing as far as where we're wanting to go, give Terry some structure to work with.
Okay, so I'm just gonna
That sounds
repeat.
like what we said. Sorry, Terry, go ahead.
Okay, I'm just gonna repeat what Chuck said, just so I have this right, because I'm kind of taking some notes. So preamble is basically going to be the expectations of our charter, or that's one part of it, and then maybe having like a 2-paragraph one that says what are our rights, or I don't know, say, you know, that's kind of a great way to say it, but our expectations with the home rule charter, what are, you know, rights or expectations that the home rule charter gives us, and then what are our values, and then a brief sentence or something recognizing our indigenous history and our diverse populations, our diversity, you know, whether it's, you know, as Bridget, you brought up that thing about like rural and urban or something like that, having a sentence that kind of says something like that in a nice way, like, you know, we have a diverse, I mean, it really is a diverse county. We have mountains, we have, you know, shorelines, we have urban, we have rural. So like diverse, we have a diverse population and we have a diverse county. So maybe just like 1 or 2 sentences kind of with that short message. Is that what kind of sums up what I think everybody's saying?
I just went and looked at the San Juan one. I read the second San Juan attachment before I read the language, and I think the pattern on the language is really great for us to model, as Chuck says, and that does separate them out as you described, Terry, but very briefly and clearly, I think. So if we follow the San Juan model, but fit us into that, so it doesn't look like San Juan, it'd be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, I like that too. So they do an acknowledgement. Did you want to do, but they talked about the, we have more than one tribe, right? That, as Chuck like rightly brought forward. Did you want an acknowledgement as well? Or did you just want to put that in the preamble with a sentence about our diverse Indigenous history, or I mean, our Indigenous history and our diverse culture and community?
My recommendation would be to not mention any tribes by name, but you could say tribes
Now, my question was,
or
like, they
indigenous
have it
people or.
separate as an acknowledgement. Do you just
I
want that
think
to be
it's,
part of our preamble?
I think it should be part of the preamble. Unless we get some specific guidance from Sam, then in the
Well,
preamble.
I
I
can
think
tell
it's-
you, Sam would probably, I'll talk with him about it, but my guess is he wouldn't mind having that separate acknowledgement calling out the different tribes. He's actually more inclusive in his indigenous, his tribal history of the county than maybe the Cowlitz as a board would be. But it's I'll talk with him. I don't know. I'm a little uncomfortable calling out specific tribe. I'd like to see if we could find a way to move an acknowledgement more into the preamble. So we're kind of giving a little bit of background as to what this is. But let me see what I can get out of him, and I might
Yeah,
just
let me
looking.
know about that, because I kind of agree, because I know that there are like smaller tribes that are not recognized and not, so just acknowledging indigenous peoples is a big, and I wouldn't want to anybody feel like they weren't consulted and they weren't, so yeah.
And there's I need to also maybe get with the Friends of Richfield Wildlife Refuge, Tana Engdahl, who's a member of the Cowlitz tribe. Her whole family's been really up in the upper echelons of the tribe. Is one, she's the spiritual leader, but she has done a lot of historical documents, kind of the history of that culture, and she might be one. Sam and Tana are both on the board of the Friends of Virtual Wildlife Refuge, so it might be maybe just reaching out to the whole board and say, "Can you help us? What would you write?"
I do want to, I want to, I want to acknowledge that, and thank you for being willing to reach out for that, because and I do want to acknowledge that there are many stakeholders here. In Clark County is a large county with, multiple indigenous people, and I think the question like for me is to any of our tribal people is if it was worded where we are recognize the indigenous people from here, would that be inclusive enough for all of them
Yeah,
instead of naming it? So that basically comes down to that, because I don't want to make people feel like, anyone to feel like that it was not inclusive of all Indigenous people? And would they be happy? Would they be okay with that kind of an acknowledgement in our preamble? And I agree with Chuck that I think it should be brought into the preamble. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and these people, I think, would probably agree on that, just knowing kind of the history and almost competition, rivalry that have been over a long term with the tribes. But they also are very good at illustrative writing, and so that's where what would you write here? What would you have us say? And just leave it, let them flow, see what they come up with.
Oh, and see, and
So,
yeah,
well, I think we can, we obviously will be discussing this later. We need a little more input, and that's what we're getting now, right? I think, I feel like we all agree that we want to include Indigenous peoples, some reference to them, and we want to include them in the charter as people of the county. So, so and we're looking at ways to do that. And with the drafts, if we can share that around, and when you get more information, we can share that around. I'm trying to cut off that discussion because, we only have about 10 minutes left in the meeting, and we want to make sure we don't spend all of it talking about that one thing that we can't solve right now. So, is there any more discussion on that subject that you wish to talk about? I didn't want to cut you off, but I just wanted to make sure we're moving along. Okay. And I know while we want to come up with a meeting schedule, I just ask a question. Do we need to meet regularly every week, or would we consider email conversation adequate? And I think we should meet at least one more time before the October meeting, before the October commission meeting.
I
think
agree.
we need more than one more time, only because if we're going to be making these changes, we'll do it on real time. And I know that we've done that before. At a meeting, we can put up the draft, we can work on the draft, then put up the draft, and maybe have a couple times. But I'm a little more open, I believe, than anyone else as far as my time. I am
I'm
leaving
pretty
for
open. I'm open too. We have 3 weeks, and actually, if I'm pretty open in most cases.
So what would
Wednesdays
be
are a little better than Thursdays, but
what would
be
be
good?
good for our next meeting is after we've had a draft that's gone back and forth a couple of times, then as Terry says, as we get closer to having the draft we'll accept, then let's have a joint meeting. But we might as well get the first back and forth done by email.
sounds good.
And if you need help, Terry, just ask.
Okay.
Yeah, I probably don't have the bandwidth to do 2 meetings between now and September 30th, but I do have bandwidth to maybe do one after we've had a draft to review.
Okay. How about on the 22nd? That's a Wednesday.
I'm in Michigan.
Okay.
You still have a computer, right?
Well, actually, I'm flying back that day, so it depends when you set it.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I can tell you the 23rd is pretty totally booked because it's Give More 24, and then Terry and I have Ridgefield City Council that night. But the 24th, I'm open until the Labor Roundtable dinner that evening.
Are they having
24th
that?
is fine with me.
Do you know if the
Okay.
Labor Roundtable dinner is still on?
As far as last Friday, it is. Not a banquet now, it's just a dinner and a couple of speeches and that's it.
24th is good for me.
Is noon a good time, or is there a better time for anybody? That's here. I know I'm gonna see what I can do with, Mr. Goodwin after this meeting. See if I can get hold of him. Okay,
It's fine with me.
we'll say noon for now, and then if I have to change it, I'll get a hold of everybody. Okay, I'm okay with that. I mean, it said I was thinking of a schedule that we could have a predetermined schedule, but since we already know that we're going to be meeting early in October, that we can talk about our next meeting at our next meeting.
Yes.
All right, so, and be nice if, I haven't heard much from Chris Goodwin. Is he doing okay? It seems like, we have asked him to try to coordinate on when to hold this meeting and others, and I'm not sure if it's a schedule or what, but I'm assuming we can find that noon would work for Chris on the 24th.
Yeah, he texted me and told me that this would be a good time also, and he did accept it in the, when the WebEx invite went out. So I don't know, maybe something came up.
I don't have any
I'll get a hold of
insights
him.
there. I'm not in any other subcommittees with him, so.
Yep. I'll get a hold of him and see what happened. See if he can meet with us on the 24th.
Okay, and I will make sure I have this ready for you guys by like some kind of like brief draft, that everybody can kind of chime in on by the end of this week or by the end of the weekend. Is that okay?
Tomorrow's better,
Yeah.
Terry.
Yeah.
And Terry, just so you know, just call or email if you need help or have questions. We can collaborate on this, all of us, I think.
Well, I planned on sending it to every. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for doing that.
Okay. 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 I think I have something to kind of work off from everybody. And I like everybody's ideas to kind of work off of that. And I think we're kind of, I'm encouraged because they're kind of like, we kind of all agree on what should be in, right? And now we just have to figure out how to put that in,
Yeah.
So does anybody have anything? Excuse me. Anything else for the good of the order? I'm going to reach over here and make that stop. Okay.
I don't have anything. I just sent a request to the Friends of Virtual Wildlife Refuge to the board. I noticed they act their next meeting Monday night. And so just send in a request of what we're trying to do here and see if anybody be willing to help us. So maybe they'll take it up at Monday's meeting.
Great.
So
Good.
I have nothing.
Okay.
I have nothing.
I have a question for Mr. Green.
Yes.
I hit record on this and we are recording right now still. But I told it to go to the cloud. So
Did you stop recording? Because if you stop it, it just automatically will generate a digital file that will be emailed to you after the meeting.
oh, okay.
Now, did you include Tina or Kristen in this?
Yes, they
Because
were
if
in the invite, yes, and
if you
they
did-
both accepted.
Yeah, if you did, they should be getting a copy of it too, so they can
Okay.
post it.
And you answered
Woohoo.
my question even better than I could ask it. Thank you.
Everything you want to know about WebEx, but we're afraid to ask.
Yeah. Okay, well, if there is nothing else,
Terry, just for Terry, you and I need to schedule a time we can practice for the Ridgefield presentation.
Okay.
So why don't you?
Are we recording still?
yes.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
Oh,
fine.
you can stop recording.
Maybe. Yeah.
If there is nothing else, I'll adjourn. We'll call the meeting adjourned. Any objections to that?
I
Yeah.
think we'll still go even after if you leave. I don't know. I think if you're the host and you leave, I think it might disconnect